Hi, Helena.
Hi, Adam.
And hi to all of our listeners. We have got such an interesting episode for you today. But before we kick off, Helena, tell us all about yourself.
Hello there. My name is Helena Dix. I'm an Australian soprano, but with 2 other passports. Can you guess what they are? Causing havoc around the globe, singing high notes and having a wonderful time doing it. I've just recently relocated back to Melbourne. I'm loving sharing this podcast with you all. Amongst many other things, I have a gorgeous dog who I love to take out. I love to cook. I love to laugh. And I love to talk, if you hadn't noticed.
And my name is Adam Miller. I'm a former opera singer turned producer, writer, and director. And Helena, you and I have had the great pleasure of working together in lots of different capacities over the years. Hey, Helena, tell us who's on the episode today.
On the podcast today, we're in for a real treat. We have Melissa Wegner, the executive director of the Met's Lindemann Artist Program, amongst many other things.
Melissa Wegner is one of the real powerhouses of talent development in the opera world. She's the executive director of the Metropolitan Opera's Lindemann Young Artist Development Program and the Laffont Competition, where she's helped shape the careers of some of today's brightest voices. She's also deeply committed to equity and mentorship through her work with organisations like Turn the Spotlight, championing artists who might otherwise be overlooked. In short, she's someone who spends her life opening doors for emerging talent and keeping our art form future-focused. Now, as we pick up the conversation, we're telling Melissa about the deep background research that we do on all our guests. If that sounds interesting to you, then listen on. And don't forget to hang around for a little wrap up at the end.
More interested. I think it's because I'm a soprano and I want to know all the goss. I asked some of our colleagues over in the States, what you like, and nobody dislikes you. Well, nobody that I spoke to dislikes you. So
What?
there you go. You've got a beautiful slate, and everyone has so much respect. Oh no, she's amazing. Oh, she's done all this, but also she's just a lovely person. And so many of my colleagues were telling me lovely, lovely things about you. So there you go. You paid them well.
That's so kind to hear.
It would be a hideous way to start the interview, to be like, so we've chatted to a whole lot of people. They all hate you.
They all think
they
you're terrible.
All think that this is going to be a terrible interview. So actually, it's probably
controversial
lucky
at
that
best.
they like you.
Hey, that's what we aim for. We want the real deal on this podcast, you know?
Oh, wow. And you're in Colombia at the moment, is that right?
I am. Yeah, I'm in Bogota.
Amazing. And so what's taken you over there?
So we have just kicked off the Met's Laffont Competition in South America. We started at the Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires last week. And this week on Wednesday, we'll be in Bogota. And we have one other district in Santiago, Chile. And then we'll have a region also in Chile. And then whoever wins at that region comes to the Met in March for the semifinals.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So why did you pick Colombia as one of the places to go to?
I was born here. So that's one of the reasons, is it's a place that I'm familiar with. But also because I came down last year, just about a year ago, and this whole undertaking would not be possible without an incredible foundation called the Ibanez Atkinson Foundation, which is centered in Santiago, Chile. And they are sponsoring the entire South America region.
Amazing.
Wow.
When I came down last year to do some fact finding, I wanted to listen to some singers. I wanted to get a sense of the depth of talent and also the support for opera in these different communities. So I made a stop in Bogota because it's a place I'm familiar with, but I had never actually done any listening to singers. And so I spent a couple of days hearing singers in audition, speaking to some voice teachers. And something really special here is that they have a paid chorus, the national chorus, and the opportunity to have, to make money as a singer. In this country, we ended up getting the most applicants from Colombia. And I think that's one of the big reasons.
Wow.
So there's I think we'll probably chat about this a little bit later on, but there is a bit of an industry pipeline for singers in Bogota.
Yeah, I think in all of South America, my understanding is that there's a stronger connection between South America and Europe.
Okay.
The connection between South America and the U.S. Some people are able to come and study, but many people audition for opportunities, whether it's academic or professional, in Europe, which I mean, that's where the majority of jobs are, as we know. Even for North Americans,
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to do as well. But I think, and who knows, maybe this is the controversial part, but we are quite proud of our singer training in the US, especially.
Yeah.
And I feel like strengthening these connections between South America and North America is something that hasn't been done in a big way before. So I'm hoping that we are able to not just connect individual singers to opportunities, but also help the opera communities here in South America realize that they are valued, they are important, and that this is an industry that hopefully will get more and more support, whether that's government or private foundations that are able to see this as a really important part of the global culture that they can foster in their community.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know that when I've spoken to American colleagues and we've talked about the journey up from, your high school education, I guess, through tertiary and all that kind of stuff, one of the things that they chatted about was this investment from governments and things from school up in kind of arts and of course, as you said, Americans and your young artist programs in opera and all the singers that you have such a huge regard on the international platform. And if you don't mind me saying as well, Americans are fierce, like they're a force not to be reckoned with as far as the singers go. It's competitive and it's competitive, of course, everywhere, like in Australia, the same thing. But one of the things that my colleagues and I often talk about is how in Australia, for instance, I mean, opera is not the biggest thing in the world. When you're young and you tell someone you're an opera singer, they kind of go, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, good one." Whereas in Europe or England, where I've been, you say I sing opera, and people are like, "Wow, it's amazing," But the one thing I will say about education and growing up through is that even though the government doesn't necessarily overly enroll in a lot of funding, one thing that we do have is a lot of opportunity in the kind of interim periods. So, for instance, lots and lots of Eisteddfods competitions, and then nowadays, especially, like a lot of these programs that will send you across to somewhere to they're sponsored kind of programs, I guess. And I'm curious, what happens, I mean, in that interim before they get to you? So, from school into that interim, I guess it depends where they are in the country, right? But I'm assuming that's the weak point in America, as far as that kind of support that they have in that interim period, getting the opportunity to get up, perform, compete, do all that. Because it kind of feels like when an outsider, and maybe it's my ignorance, looks in at somewhere like America and like looks at the Lindemann program or looks at one of these fantastic young artist programs, I'm like, what do they have before that? Like, I mean, what's your view on that?
So I am really deeply connected to that age range. The Laffont competition we have really specific like dates for eligibility, but it's generally ages 20 to 30. And so every year, I'm in my 15th season at the Met, believe it or not.
Wow. So
it's been, I keep working with that age range. And so it's interesting because I feel really connected to a couple of different points of major tension. You might call them pain points. One of those is the point when singers are encountering the professional world or like the professional world outside of academia. So, they might be an undergrad and they are applying for summer festivals or summer programs, pay to sings, but they're encountering people in more of a professional realm outside of their academic system. Sometimes it's in grad school, sometimes it's in postgrad. There's so much training that is offered that you can stay too long at the fair, in my opinion.
Oh, interesting.
The next point of tension is when people are phasing out of training programs, the professional training programs like young artist programs, resident artist programs, into the full professional world. So I find those two things, when they first kind of touch on the world and then when they're having to fully transition to flying without a net underneath them anymore, because there's no longer that scaffolding of support. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it's a smooth transition, but frequently it's a lot of moments for growth or for disappointment.
Yeah.
And a lot of soul searching, frankly.
Yeah, of course.
And so what do you see as characterizing people who stay too long in that education sector, who stay too long at the fair?
It's an interesting question. I think that, I guess I would say that I wish, especially singers that are being trained in North America, would try earlier and often at engaging with the professional world.
Mhm.
Yeah, great.
I think people are taught a lot that they're not ready. And I also feel like the people who listen to that message and are like obedient singers, and they're dedicated to following their voice teacher or their coach or whomever's, advice. It's too conservative of an approach, frankly.
Okay.
There's no way to learn how to swim in the professional world other than to jump in.
Yeah.
You can learn everything about it, but at some point you have to dive in and do it. So I think that is one aspect of it. And then the other thing is there are some people who have that 0.01% of talent that seem to get opportunities and succeed despite themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that is polarizing for people who are trying to do it what they conceive of as the right way. And I think they need to be cross influenced. Some people who are doing it according to some plan that they have or their team of advisors have. They need to get out there and be more bold.
Yeah.
And then some other people need to figure out how to learn all their music before the first rehearsal and be on time and have some habits that
She's looking at you, Adam.
The gifts
What?
that they
No, that's about the only thing I do right. Everything else I do wrong, but I try to learn my music before I turn up.
No, I totally hear you. And do you think that that's also, I mean, I sound old when I say this, but when I look
Gotta
at
do the old voice then.
singers,
Do the old voice.
Yeah, in my day, when we were singers, because I'm quite passionate as well as obviously having a very active performance life still. One of my big things is looking at younger singers and mentoring them through, especially now I've come back to Melbourne and giving advice. And do you think that sometimes, and I don't know, I might get canned for saying this, but there's a false idea in the generation that's coming up of I'm trying to think of how to eloquently say this. There's an idea about where they think they're going to go. In Australia, we have a lot of singers who are like, oh well, yeah, I'm just gonna pop over and audition for the Young Artist program at the Met, and I'm like, are you serious? Like, have you worked in the profession? Have you put yourself out there? Have you learnt your strengths and your weaknesses? Do you understand how competitive it is? And, how the best of the best are going to be there, and you have to be able to stand up and be your package, but with experience of knowing who you are before you get there. Because not only about passing the audition or getting into the program, but as you said, actually like being able to hold yourself within that and knowing yourself as a performer. Do you find with this kind of a younger generation, there's a little bit of a dream world that lives upstairs about just jumping into things at the top rather than building the blocks along the way, or am I being a complete cow in saying that?
No, I know what you're saying, and I think even though people have more information at their fingertips than we did when we were coming up, and that's what's hard for us to reconcile, like generationally.
Sure.
It's like, you have access to all of this information. That being said, there is something about ignorance being bliss. And there is a little bit of, if they knew how hard it was, would they do it? Would they try?
Yeah.
So I feel like, again, you can hold both things. And I think both of those perspectives are really important at different times.
Sure. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, and I know that you both have probably seen this, but there's a lot of really talented people who have just melted under the pressure of really knowing how hard it is, how competitive it is,
Okay. Yeah.
how select the opportunities are. So I feel like that's why I tend to be really individual when I'm speaking with artists, to try and figure out what the perspective is that they're coming from. So that, I think that my job generally in the industry is to help provide context to people, to help them make more informed decisions. But I really believe strongly that what makes people great artists is that they are following their own path, their own intuition. So that's why sometimes when I find those people who are like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go sing for so and so," I'm like, "Okay, cool. Tell me more about that." And then I'll just try to steer them. I'm like,
Right.
"So what were you thinking about singing?" Like, "Okay, that's cool. So they don't produce any contemporary operas. So maybe don't start with that one. Let's think about a different." So I really try
Right.
to, one of my colleagues called me the queen of reframe.
I love that.
That's good. I like
Because
that.
it really is just about, trying to keep the energy and enthusiasm. Because what really is upsetting for me is when you see people who are just so kind of beaten down and embittered
Sure.
Yeah.
with like the weight of it all. So anything I can do to kind of keep that excitement and unbridled passion and the eagerness to do it.
Oh, that's
Yes.
amazing.
I'm like, great.
Absolutely. Keeping the industry aflame with the next gen who are creating their own maps and owning what they are, but also, keeping our beautiful industry rolling and moving forward as well, right? So
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense.
Tell us about your job then. So, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Opera's Lindemann Young Artist Development Program. What does that entail? What does a day look like for you? And then within the industry, where do you feel like that role sits and where your responsibility lies?
So I started at the Met 15 years ago with the competition. So it used to be called the Metropolitan Opera National Council Auditions.
Yep.
And I started with that, helping to run the competition, which at the time was through the US and Canada. We actually used to have a district in Australia.
Oh, wow.
But we can come back to that.
Ooh.
There you go.
Yes. So, just putting it out there. So the interesting thing about the competition is that it's completely run by volunteers except for a couple of us at the Met. And I also worked with Lenore Rosenberg, who's in charge of casting the covers and secondary roles.
Beautiful, Lenore. Beautiful.
So she and I worked together for years. So I had my toe, pretty much a leg in the casting side of things. And then so many different levels of the story, but we're going to fast forward. In 2018, I became the executive director of the competition. And in 2021, I became the executive director also of the Lindemann program. So I run both programs. The interesting thing about Lindemann is, that's the Met's Young Artist program. We have about 15 artists that we are helping to nurture and connect with the resources that the Met has. And so part of what I do, and this is the really exciting part, especially having been with the competition so long, is not just identifying talent, which I've been doing the whole time, but now also getting to develop it on a daily basis.
And nurture them. Yeah, nice.
So I get to see and operate in the industry in a really macro way where I'm creating policies for the competition that change the way people think about opera, singer training throughout all of the places where we are. But then also working in a micro way with artists,
Wow. Yeah.
pianists and singers on a daily basis, and really, thinking about the nitty-gritty of how to advise which video you're going to send for what audition, and how should you take this audition on the same day as this performance, and everything in between.
Yeah.
The black shoes or the brown shoes.
Like so individual on each artist, which is why it must be so interesting.
It is. And also because I travel for the competition throughout, North and now South America, and I also adjudicate international competitions. So I'm really connected to the whole opera industry. I think I have a really unique perspective to share And I try to do that as much as I can. I really value transparent communication, and sort of the flip side of encouraging all of that unbridled passion for the arts is also to make sure people are connected to the resources that can help them get there.
Mhm.
You know, they all people connect and need them at different times, but I think making sure that they are there, that there are resources to be shared, is really important.
And what an interesting, I was just thinking about what you were saying about all the different hats that you wear at the moment, the fact that you're, adjudicating internationally and traveling. So you really do have a handle on not just, one little area. You're really worldwide and knowing what's going on. What a fantastic feather in the cap for the Met to have you doing all those things and being just so open-eyed to the world, and not just, I'm just running a young artist program, in New York, but actually, no, I know worldwide what's going on. I know what levels are going on. I know, gosh, they're very lucky. And also for you to be able to do your job so damn well, which you obviously do. How lucky are the young artists to have, to have that in someone as well. I just think that's awesome. I mean, it must mean that your life is insane, but how awesome for them.
I mean, one of the things is, though, I learned so much from the artists all the time.
Sure.
Because I studied as a singer, and I never really loved opera until I stopped pursuing it. So I was more into new music and art song and concert work. So I've learned about working in houses around the world in the country from artists who've done it.
Yeah.
So I really learned so much from them about what that culture is like.
Yes.
And I don't want to be in a bubble of the Metropolitan Opera. It is a very specific house.
Yes.
Very specific.
I do know.
And
yeah,
and I'm aware of that. And the way that we cast singers and the way that we kind of have our antenna out is different than a 700-seat house in Europe. So I'm very aware of that all the time, and it's very interesting for me to just see where some of our alumni of the competition and the Lindemann program end up, what that career path is. And frankly, the 15 years that I've been at the Met, there's been a lot of change in the industry.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's been an interesting ride to be a part of.
Yeah. Can I ask you, with the Young Artist program, because something that I'm forever curious about, I guess, and every young artist program around the world is going to be different. So I guess, your answer might be different to someone else's. But when you're considering a batch of new intakes for a young artist program, obviously you're developing the program so that they have a whole host of performance opportunities around New York, and they go off and they do things. But of course, they're training as well, and they're involved sometimes, as I had a young artist who was involved in the Norma that I did at the Met. The Clotilda, she was a young artist. I've had a couple of them come in and cover on smaller roles and things like that. So my question to you is, given especially that you guys know several years ahead what the programming is for the house, when you look at your young artist intake, is there anything that, in the fact of the repertoire that you're doing, that will influence the intake that you have, knowing what opportunities there are in small roles? Or do you just go, hey, we're going to take the best of what we've got, and then if they slot in, and otherwise we'll get someone from outside or from chorus or, from whatever for the smaller roles? How does that work?
Great question. So it is kind of a double-edged sword for us. The Lindemann program is not relied upon for labor for the house.
Yep.
So we do try to get our artists, including the pianists, on contract while they're with us. And the current artistic department is very much in favor of that. And again, it might be a very small cover. Their first year, or a couple of very small covers. The thing that we don't offer that some other programs do is it's very rare that someone's covering a principal role.
Of course.
It's even more rare that they would get to sing it. Yet, in the last few years, we have had that happen. We had one of our tenors actually sing a performance of Nemorino.
Oh, wow.
And I would say one of the bigger assignments that people would have in the Lindemann program would be covering Liu. But it would be rare that they would get to sing it.
Yeah.
And so that is it. Like I said, it's actually a double-edged sword because there are some people who, when we hear them, the thing they need most is stage experience. So then I tell them, wow, you have this great ensemble offer at this German house where you're going to get to sing 5 roles. That sounds like it's probably more in line with the right next step for you. And I remind artists all the time that the goal of all of this is not to get into a young artist program. It is to be working.
To be working, yeah.
So that is, that's one of the things that I try to talk to artists about when they're coming in. But really, we are very lucky in that if we hear, see, experience a talent that we feel has just incredible world-class potential, that we have the opportunity to engage them in the Lindemann program. And like I said, if there's the right casting opportunity, great. That's excellent. But the timing doesn't always work out. We don't have like a deadline. We don't have applications. It's really about finding the right match.
Yeah.
And we don't have any like quotas for numbers of sopranos or tenors that we need at any time.
Okay.
We do try to have a bit of balance because we have recitals, opera scenes, some other things that we do as a program. But we've had 5 sopranos and 7 of everyone else, in the singers before. That's not uncommon.
Okay.
The other thing about the Lindemann program is it's a real development program.
Yep.
We have resources to provide people 2 voice or conducting lessons, like 2 voice lessons a week.
Wow.
The pianists get either piano or conducting. Everyone has movement, like personal Alexander technique, movement coaches, and dance.
Yeah.
One-on-one language tutors, diction. And then on the coaching, of course, there's diction, but there's also all of the musical coaching with our staff, which is incredible.
All the best
but
of the
also with
best.
all of the
Yeah.
artists.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then a lot of other financial resources. So for some artists, they are at a point in their career where they should just be working. Other artists, maybe they're a bigger voice, maybe they came to this later, maybe they're really young and they need, not a lot of people think of the Met as a safe space, but for some artists, especially with the group,
They just need that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just being in the room with that highest level of excellence can be really, really helpful.
Absolutely.
But it's trying to find the right time for this specific opportunity.
That's so interesting because, of course, I understood that there were so many development opportunities within the program, but I hadn't thought of it as such a focused education program. So I was a young artist at Opera Queensland, and it was much more practical and much more about being embedded in each one of the productions that happened during that season. And that's why I did it. I was really drawn to getting my feet on a big stage and having those opportunities. And I will say that it was a trial by fire. I had a real experience of going, great, and this is how you work with an orchestra like this, and this is how you work at a speed like that, and this is how you deal with international artists who just jump in, do the role, and you don't get to work with them for a while. All those kinds of things. Having a safe opportunity to learn some of that stuff within the Lindemann program sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a really special opportunity. And I know that they really value their time in the room. The other thing that's interesting, I think, about our program is that we utilize these resources not just to prepare them for their roles on stage, but for anything else they need to be working on. So like right now, everyone's sort of deciding on which contracts to take for summer.
Oh, wow.
Those offers have been coming in the last couple of weeks from various festivals and programs. So they can utilize our faculty to make sure that those roles are really learned to the best of their ability before they go off in the summer.
Wow.
In addition to getting all of their other work done and getting a lot of feedback on, of course, we bring a lot of people in to hear them in audition, whether it's management for the unmanaged singers, and different people who can hire and engage singers in different ways. So they get a lot of practice with auditioning, but we also get to have feedback with them a lot. And then the other thing is the relationship continues. And I will say this is true for the competition and for the Lindemann program. With the competition, any of the singers that get to the semifinals, which is usually around 20 to 25 singers every year, some singers remain as semifinalists, some become finalists, some are the winners. So we usually end up with like 5 winners,
Okay.
give or take.
Mhm.
And once they get to the national rounds, then they're connected to the Met in a different way. They can come back and sing for additional funds.
Wow.
If they ask, hey, I'm in town, would you listen to me? I'll say, sure. And I'm like, do you want me to invite any colleagues, or is this just an us thing? So it's that relationship, and I won't say mentorship because it's really just like professional collegiality. It continues, and I think that investment is helpful. And I will say also, you were asking about sort of the role in the industry. Once someone is in the Lindemann program, I've hired them, so to speak. I've cast them in the role of a Lindemann artist. So then I become sort of a neutral party in their career after that. I'm not their manager. I'm not someone who they're trying to get to hire them again. I feel like I get to have a more neutral perspective when they're trying to sort out their future career decisions.
Amazing.
Because I'm there to just support them.
Oh, that's incredible.
And what a wonderful sense of community that creates for them, not only in the sense of having, a great mentor and a great opportunities, but also feeling like they're a part of something. Because, of course, as opera singers, we get thrown out into the world and we don't often feel like we're part of anything. You're being freelance, we're working, all around the globe, and having that kind of little community to belong to, I think is fantastic, and people that they can ask advice on or call upon, but also just to feel like a sense of belonging, I guess, if you like. And I was listening to what you were saying about the program and all the different things, and it must be really interesting too, because as you just said to me before, I mean, opera's changed so much, over the course of the previous years, and I know even just at the Met itself, like even in the programming of the Met in the past kind of 5 years has changed dramatically too, in the sense of new works and the way that they're looking at. And I know you're responsible for kind of a lot of the new work stuff as well that comes through. So when you're in the hot seat, I guess, if you like, are you thinking what's the kind of biggest change that you've seen, say, in the past 5 years on what you need to provide the next generation with in order to help them? Like, is there anything in the program that would never have been there 5 years ago that's there now?
I think we provide more professional resources, and it's just sort of a given. And I think more and more, at least American training programs do this. So they get to meet with a financial advisor on an individual basis.
That's great.
to help like figure out budgeting long term as well as short term. We have a couple of performance coaches with the Lindemann program. One who's a bit more on the mental health side, one who's a bit more like performance psychology.
Wow.
That
Cool.
we cover those expenses. I've also tried to be really clear, because especially coming out of the pandemic, it was such a difficult time for everyone. I've really tried to redefine the relationship between artists' personal and professional expectations, and the way that you have to work within those two spheres to ask for help when you need it. So part of that is, one of the things that drives me crazy is when people, tell pianists like, okay, well, the first job that you're going to have is to be the therapist to the singers. And I'm like, stop.
Oh, God.
I get that there's an aspect of that. And certainly, like, you think of voice teachers, coaches, some pianists, that, you're exploring really deep things, very personal things. And you have to go to places that, of course, require vulnerability and require an openness and hopefully a deep truth telling. That means that we are connected and sharing things in a different way. However, and this is interesting with having an international program, the staff for the Lindemann program, our administrator, our associate director, or the faculty side, head of music, principal coach, and all of the teachers, none of us are trained. Well, I shouldn't say none of us, because we do have a couple of therapists, but for the most part, we are not trained in giving like mental health advice.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's why we try to say, here are those resources.
Yes.
And in the United States, we have to have a bit of a difference between what we can professionally provide. And you can be empathetic in a professional situation. And you can say, I'm going to be with you and I can help you all the way through to finding the professional partners who are going to take you the rest of the way. But that's something that I think when you think about where the industry has been so intertwined with interpersonal issues and the things that we've really tried to kind of, I would say, just professionalize beyond, that's something that people don't talk about very much, is like really declaring where those boundaries are. But that's what I think of as like contemporary empathetic professionalism.
That's incredible. I've never heard that perspective before. That's fantastic. And I think, Helena, you and I can probably relate as people who've come up through the industry when none of that stuff is considered. I think that's fabulous. And look, I'm out of the industry now as a performer, but Helena, do you see that kind of conscious thought about mental health well-being within the industry as you're coming through within the UK or here in Australia?
Not much. And not at the top levels, no.
Wow.
But I see it coming. I see it coming up through, as Melissa was saying, I see it coming up more and more through, younger people. And actually, it's interesting. I was recently in a production that had quite a variable age range within the show, so between the principals. I was not the oldest, I would just like to say, but you had someone several generations ahead of me, myself and a couple of others, and then some kind of younger people in some of the smaller roles. And what was really interesting, talking about mental health and just approach and being open and honest on the floor, was there was such a variation in how everyone works in the room when it comes to that. So you had the older generation who was asked to do something that they felt really uncomfortable with, and they kind of got a bit gruffy about it and didn't want to talk about it, and just it was just under the carpet. But then they, it wasn't a very happy place, And then you've got because I'm kind of in the middle, like I've done enough with young people to understand what, about that. But I'm also from a slightly older generation where you just get on with it and you suck it up as we would say in Australia, or, you get on with it. And then you've got some young people who are, it's like an extreme. You've got some who are a little bit too sensitive about a whole lot of things. And so we had a situation where we were on the floor working, and this young person said, like quite early, and the director was, middle-aged as well, and a female, and very open and happy to talk about things. And they were lying on the floor, and they said, "Oh, can we just stop this rehearsal, please, and have a discussion about where I feel comfortable being touched?" It was like, I've actually never been in a room where someone just very openly, like, it wasn't to the side, it wasn't, it was like someone saying, "Does everyone want a bit of cake with morning tea?" Like, it was just so kind of open and so half of me went, "Oh, for God's sake," and then the other half of me went, "Oh, that's really cool that you felt comfortable enough to bring that discussion to be open." So maybe I'm taking that question a bit far, Adam, but it's a really interesting thing, because of course different countries and different places are going to be different about the way that they approach things as well. But
we definitely see intimacy coordinators coming into the industry now. Like when I've been producing things, that's now gone onto my list of staff that I'll be bringing in for certain scenes. And one of the really interesting things for me is looking through an opera and saying, does this require an intimacy coordinator at this point? At what point do I need to bring someone in to make sure everyone in the room is feeling comfortable? And I think that's just an interesting question that I've never had to answer before. So no, I think you're absolutely right.
It definitely works on both levels. Like I had a young man who was being quite intimate with me in a scene where I was the lead role in the show, and he was just brought in to to kind of do some kind of smaller acting things. And it literally at every corner, he was like, "Are you okay with this? Do you, if I put my hand on your shoulder, are you?" And he kept asking all these questions, and I was like, "Can I just stop you right there?" I said, I really appreciate you asking me these things. Like, I really do. I'm going to tell you, let's just get it out now, because if you keep asking me, we're not going to create art either. Like, there's going to be a point where we can't find. So it's a really fine line, and I'm really open and honest, of course. And me, I'm quite blunt and open as a human and as a singer as well. But it's great that this is being embedded, from this young age, and they feel like they've got that support, because God damn it, like, we all know how tough it is as well, right? Like the mental health side and the journey. And I think as well, Melissa, it's great that you're doing that, because unless you've walked the walk and done the road, you can only tell someone so much how tough it is out there, and only tell someone how tough it is to survive as a singer, but not just in the sense of talent, in the sense of your mental health. Like, Adam and I have interviewed Christine Gerke, we've had Jamie Barton, we've had like a lot of fantastic singers on this program, and we talk about, even at that level, life on the road and how tough it is, and all that kind of thing. So I think it's bang on that you guys are doing that and making that at the forefront of their minds and stuff as well.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
But the other thing is, it's like, I will say, to provide that 360-degree context for them. Like, I did a class a few years back. I put together a class for both some Juilliard students and the Lindemann artists together. And we had an intimacy coordinator, and then we also had a stage director to talk about what it's like to work with an intimacy coordinator and what it's like to not have one in the room, and how to advocate for yourself when there's not
That's
one.
so good.
And we also talked about the fact that there are plenty of houses where if you did stop and say, like, "I'm sorry, we need to have a discussion about my personal boundaries," you might be let go.
Yeah.
Depending on where in the world you are.
True.
Because it would be perceived more of, you are costing money in this rehearsal time, or you are being difficult. And there are just different ways that this industry works, because it's global.
Yeah.
Sure.
And all of our cultures, we kind of like to think that we have this global monoculture because of social media. But when you're in a room, like, the culture in practice is very different.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So again, just figuring out, like, when do you personally need to speak up? And when do you personally need to, like you said, like, "Hey, let's just touch me everywhere except for here, and let's not talk about it again till the end, and then we'll do notes."
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, you have my permission until I say that was too much.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, it's that thing. And then again, just like getting people comfortable with having agency to ask for what they need and know that they might not get it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. And you're right. It can get taken in so many different ways. Like, it can get taken as people being difficult, or, and even at the top level, that I'm working at, it's so variable in conductors, directors, old school directors, European conductors, American directors. You're right. There is so many, and there's only so much you can teach people. And as you're saying as well, and then they've just got to dip their toe in and go for it, and do the yards and work in places and experience not only the world, in the way that the world manages itself, but themselves and their boundaries. And as you're saying, if you can provide that to young singers, young performers coming up, and if they can just find that version of themselves, not only as a performer, but how they would then react in the rehearsal room, or how you take that, you really have to be a people person. I mean, you really have to be so aware of cultures and people and how to manage people. And I've seen that, my goodness. I mean, and I have to say, more than anywhere, I've seen that at the Met, because it brings international people all together. And, I did my first show with the Met was covering on Hernani. And that was a wonderful show. And I was like a kid with popcorn, covering Angela Mead and in at the Met for the first time and working with all these great people. But on the flip side, I had a couple of colleagues who were really difficult, and so much to the point where we were under a lot of pressure. And I think and a lot of young people would say the same. Covering is far more stressful than doing anything else. And as a cover, you get away with zero, whereas when you're an artist, you get away with a lot, especially bigger named artists. Hey. And as a cover, like if you sing one wrong word, then you look to be getting the sack. But if you're an artist and you don't know half your text, I'm not going to name any names, then you're fine. But the thing is, what I found fascinating was this colleague of mine who was there. He was being so difficult with all the coaches and the language coaches. And we were in a session with Levine, with an Italian coach, with a music coach, and everyone was throwing their things at us because the main cast got an afternoon off unexpectedly. So we got a chance to work with the big wigs. I was so excited. So, I'm there like, okay, yes. Anything you want to tell me? Yep, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to give it a go. That's my attitude. And that's why I get along well in an international room, because I'm willing to do that. But the gentleman with me was very prickly. And at one stage, we were getting thrown thing. Can you do this? No, do this. No, do that. And it was a lot. I will say that. And at one point, I giggled and I said, whoa. I said, I'd just like to say to everyone that I am so grateful for all this, but I am but a soprano, and there's a lot of space up here in the brain capacity. And just give me a moment, and I promise I'll process it. And everyone had a laugh. And then they took a moment. But for him, he was like, no, he was very aggressive and very, didn't want to do it. And at one point, closed his score in the middle of the rehearsal and said, I'm going home now.
Oh, God.
I was just like, what the hell is going on? And okay, so now in 2025, you could look at that and say, well, good on him, because he was protecting himself. Or you could look at it and say, what like, seriously, like, so you've got to be prepared for every outcome, right? It's fascinating. Yeah.
That's it.
No, it's so true. I'm just wondering, on a practical level, coming back to the Lindemann and Laffont competition, what do you look for? You're sitting on the panel. What should artists coming through who are desperate to get into the program or desperate to progress in the competition, what should they be bringing and what should they be thinking about, and maybe what should they be avoiding? Because I'm always interested in, there's lots of great things you can do, but also there are so many little things that you should probably avoid. And I'm just wondering if you might be able to shed some insight there.
Should they shake hands with the panel? That's what I want to know.
It depends where the panel is seated.
Oh, right at the back of the auditorium. I want to see the long walk.
Yeah, that'd be awkward.
It's so interesting, like the whole greeting of people. I think that, let's start with the Laffont competition because it's a little easier. I'm really, again, because I think that transparency is so important. We adjudicate on 4 things, from the video qualifying round all the way through the grand finals. All the judges are asked to look for 4 things equally weighted. The voice, so that's how it's used technically, and the instrument itself, and how it's being showcased in the repertoire the singer has chosen. The second thing is their musicianship, accuracy, the ability to actually make music out of these dots on a page, to make Mozart sound like Mozart, Puccini like Puccini. So the musicality of it. The third thing is interpretation. So that has to do with dramatic character building, as well as the way in which they're using language and text. So really that communication piece. And then the fourth thing is career potential.
Oh, great.
And those are the 4 things, because sometimes you have, like, we don't have like a point system out of 100 or anything, but let's pretend you had a light lyric soprano who's got, a 9 out of 10. She's doing really, really well. And then people are like, well, she did everything right. Why did that like Heldon tenor win, who was kind of crackly? And that's one of the parts where it's like, this is a more rare voice type that we may feel that we want to move forward, because the way the market is, there might be one of those budding Heldon tenors who's maybe right now a 5 out of 10, but there might be 50 sopranos that day that were 9 out of 10.
Bloody sopranos.
And that's really, really difficult. Difficult to hear, difficult to receive, difficult to give. But that's the potential piece. So that's what we look for in the competition. On the Lindemann side, we really are looking for some aspect of what they're doing that we believe, in combination with the resources of the Met, is world class. It's not that they're necessarily going to be the next stars on the Met stage, but that there's something so compelling about their instrument, their artistry, that we can imagine it being able to be translated through a global top-level career.
Wow.
And the other big part of it is trying to find artists who are at a stage where they still need development. We talked through that earlier. But then also the ones that are in a sweet spot of having enough confidence and fortitude to walk through the doors of the Met every day and be vulnerable.
Wow.
That is very, very difficult.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the hardest pieces, because there are some people, what I've learned is people will say nearly anything when I'm having the conversations about, like, all right, we're thinking about this, but, I think maybe we're thinking that you're heading towards this repertoire. And so, we're going to do this coaching session, and you let us know if you like the way that coaching session works, because that's the way that we're going to be working in the program. And this is the repertoire that we're seeing you moving into. Cool. People will say yes, yes, yes. And then they get in the program and it's like, no. So I've learned to listen to my instincts a little bit more during those conversations, and to ask different kind of questions going into it that are maybe more specific, or give me a little bit more information than just like, are you willing to do this? Because people usually say yes.
Wow. So there is a real personality piece as well that you're looking at within that program, recognizing that they've got this arc that they're going to be going across over time. That's so interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially because it's rolling. So the idea of the people who are in the program working together every day, that community piece is huge. And I've learned a lot there as well, in terms of like what will be a powder keg of personalities, like kind of where the parameters are of what people can deal with and what is pushing people too far.
All right.
In a really intense environment.
Wow.
What's the toughest conversation you've ever had to have with a young singer?
I've had to have quite a few, honestly. I would say a recurring difficult one is that I cannot dream a bigger dream for you than you have for yourself. You need to figure out what you want, and we are here to help you get there. But those conversations sometimes happen when people are a bit down, when you can tell that they're quitting on themselves, when it's not going well. But that's and it's not always in those situations, but that's a big one, is that idea of, this has to be something that you want. I cannot want it for you. And if it's not something that you want, that's okay. So sometimes that's happening when people are sort of quitting on themselves. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes they just need that kind of kick in the pants, that is not our job, that is their job.
Yes.
But those conversations can sometimes be quite difficult.
Gotcha.
Because it's a moment of realization for people that maybe this isn't what they want.
Oh,
and
wow.
maybe they're realizing that for the first time.
Gotcha.
So those can be difficult. It's also really hard to have conversations with people when they're pretty much doing everything right and it's not the career's not happening.
God.
That's really hard. And I feel like one of the best things I can do is be there for them through that time and listen and try to figure out how I can be the best support for them.
Sure.
It's going to be different with every person. And I mean, the other ones are just when people are being a jerk. And frankly, it's like, those are really hard for me because I am acutely aware, especially working with the competition, of how many people would just do anything for the opportunity that someone else is maybe squandering in that moment.
Yep.
So those are hard because I have to balance being in the room with this person who's behaving in a way that I don't respect, frankly, but that I don't want them to think that I've given up on them or I'm judging them so harshly that they can never recover from it.
Yeah. Wow.
That's a tricky it's a tricky hat to wear to be supportive but yet honest, because of course you can't just beat around the bush either, can you? You can't just say, hey, that's cool, go with that attitude into the industry and you'll go a long way, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people need to learn things the hard way.
Yeah.
They're going to do it the way they're going to do it.
Yeah. So you mentioned support before, which I'd love to pivot to your work with Turn the Spotlight. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that's incredibly important as a program, but also really fascinating.
Sure. Turn the Spotlight is one of the organizations that I work with to provide mentorship. In the case of Turn the Spotlight, it is to people from communities that have not always been featured. And so it tends to be women and non-binary and BIPOC people, people of color. So that is an interesting group because it's also, I think almost all of the mentors are women or women-identified people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found it to be really interesting through the years to also just get to know the other people on the mentorship side of it.
Oh, wow.
Because we don't have as many excuses to get together on an industry-wide basis. So I've gotten to meet people through Turn the Spotlight for me personally that it was a real honor to be on the same Zoom call as them.
Yeah.
Sure.
But then the fact that we're also there to help make sure that people are connected to resources and support for their projects coming up, and we're creating other kind of next generations of people who are connected to each other is, I think, really helpful. I do some work with Opera America. Also, I'm in their women's opera mentoring program right now.
Fantastic.
I also have interns every year at the Met, and that's been a really important thing for me in terms of educating kind of future leaders in the industry. And a lot of them have gone on to amazing things or have continued to work at the Met. So that's another area in which that happens. And I just think in general, like I wish, in a way, I wish I could spend even more time on that, but I have to be a little bit more picking and choosing, which is why working with some organizations that have good programs takes some of that organizational work out
Sure.
for me. But I think it's so important. I mean, I am where I am because of the incredible investment by teachers and people who came before me.
Yes.
And people who let me ask dumb questions, and people who answered my text messages out of the blue when I hadn't been in touch enough, and people from all areas of the industry who provided that for me. So I think it's so important that I think one of the most important things in all of the industry is that it will not sustain and certainly will not grow if we don't pay it forward, if we don't continue to
absolutely
do good things for other people.
So you're basically superhuman, which we love. And I mean, you are. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you know, not only for our industry, but just for the development of good people and communication and moving forward.
And generosity. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've all of us, I think, who've come up, you know, from generations before, there was for a little time a lot of the opposite of that. There was a lot of bitter people around who enjoyed the opposite of that, of cutting people down and making you go through the trials and tribulations and all that kind of thing. And I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen in our industry, both in the sense of people like yourself who are in these positions of power and mentorship. Wonderful, if I may say, and I'm not being sexist when I say this, but wonderful women who are empowering others and coming in and through, and also forefront in our leadership of singers who are doing that. You know, in generations gone by, people would never help each other, or you know, they would be in their position very rarely helping others. And now we've got all these phenomenal leading artists in the world, and social media can be a bit of a bitch, but it can also be wonderful as far as reaching out, helping people. I mean, I look at people that we've had on our program, as I said before, like Christine and Jamie and people like that, who are
goddesses as far as all this kind of stuff goes, and people, do feel comfortable to reach out and to share and to hold each other up and all that kind of thing. So thank you for being that person. Obviously, you've had great people who've mentored you and gone through as well. So you've got that fire in your belly to do the same, and you're taking that through, to our next generation who are, who will hopefully not only be wonderful artists, but also, behave beautifully and make it a more exciting and wonderful workplace to be in. So I take off my hat to you for all of that. I think it's just
your virtual hat.
And my virtual, yeah. Okay, all right. You don't have to tell everyone that I'm not wearing a hat. I mean, I want everyone to think that I wear a
chapeau.
I want everyone to think I wear a tiara permanently. I've got to keep my diva-ness.
Okay, if you're getting a tiara, I'm wearing a top hat. This is how we roll.
I see it.
Thank you. Thank you very
much. Look, with that, I think we're coming to the end of our time. But before we head off, Melissa, we like to ask 5 rapid fire questions at the end of all of our great chats. Are you open to our 5 rapid fire questions?
Yep, let's go.
Fantastic. Helena, I'll throw it over to you.
Melissa, have you ever juggled, or can you juggle?
No. Not like objects. I juggle a lot of things in my schedule, but not objects.
I like that.
Yes,
I like
good
that.
answer. Yeah, good answer.
Have you ever busked?
Kind of.
Okay.
Not well. Have I busked outside? Not really, but I do have a duo with a guitarist, and I sing in bars.
Oh, really? That's fantastic. What style? Tell us all about this.
Pop, rock, jazz,
cool.
Pretty much anything. Folk. Yeah, little country.
Oh, I love that. We're going to count that.
I was going to ask what you do with your downtime, but I love that. Yeah, I love that. So if you weren't in your current job doing, well, all your wonderful jobs and all the wonderful hats, what would you have done with your life if you hadn't have gone into this field? What job would you love to have done?
I hope that I have a lot of other acts in my future. So some of them are things that I would hope still to do. But I think, something that's interesting is I was thinking about, should I go into medicine or something? I was like, oh, no, it's way too much time in school. Then I went to, school for opera singing for 8 years. So I don't know. That would have been an interesting path.
Medicine,
wow.
There you go.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. If you could perform a duet with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
That is an unfair question.
We know.
Oh my gosh.
We know.
Living or dead? I mean, there's not one answer to this one. Ooh, geez, this is tough. My first gut reaction was Barbra Streisand, but I don't know which piece it would be.
Ooh,
and maybe Happy Days Are Here Again.
Oh, that's good.
Nice.
Yes. Oh,
nice.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, that's a good choice.
Okay.
We'll pay that.
If you could have a personal theme song for every time you walked into a room to be played, every time you walked into a room, what would your personal theme song be?
See, I think it'd have to change. I feel like the melody would stay the same, but like the accompaniment would be different based on the day.
Ooh, I like that.
So I want something with we want something with enough range in the melody that not everyone can do it, number one. And then, something that could change with different harmonies, but also with different genres.
Oh, I like that.
Wow, excuse me. Yeah, okay.
I think that is the most creative response we've ever had to that answer.
Definitely.
I love it. You've set a new standard now as well. People are going to have to match that. I like that a lot.
Most people are like, oh, I want to just go with dong, 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 dong. And you're like, no, it has to have a different texture.
Original composition. We're going to bring this in. Oh, that's so good.
I love it.
That's great. Look, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the episode. This has been amazing. And you have no idea the list of questions that we had to ask you. We could have talked for hours, but you have so much going on in your life. You won't have time for these things, but we'd love to have you back another time if you're interested, because there are so many more things we'd love to chat about.
I'm game. Let's do it.
Lovely. Oh, thank you so much.
Fantastic.
But look, thank you again
Melissa,
for coming on today. This has been amazing. And look, we'll chat again soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
That conversation was fantastic, but it made me feel like such an underperformer. I don't have that seemingly limitless capacity for generosity, for big thinking, for micro thinking as well, for the detail. Like, her brain and her time management must be insane, just insane.
How awesome is it to have people like that in the world? And, you know, when we kind of approached Melissa for the interview, I was just super keen because of the position that she holds and all the things that she does currently in the industry, and I thought it could be interesting. And what I've come out on the other side with is just saying, this woman is superhuman.
Yes.
Like, she's just phenomenal, and also just so open and knowledgeable and willing to create such excellence at this level for our next generation of singers is exactly what this industry needs. I mean, I'm in awe, to be honest.
There were so many things that I wanted to hit because, you know, when we were researching to put our questions together for this conversation, it just kept going. Like, the work that she does, and I'm genuinely we only got to chat briefly at the end about Turn the Spotlight, but I love the idea of that program, and I really wanted to dig deeper, and maybe thankfully we didn't have enough time to really get into it because I think it's such an interesting time in America at the moment with the headwinds around diversity and inclusion that I think it's a very difficult space to be, but having generous advocates who can work in that space are amazing and really will keep our industry alive. That brings me hope and brings me joy, and seeing the attitude that she brings to everything, that positivity of what she can bring and how she can help other people is just so great.
And that she's obviously open to learning and adapting and collaborating with people. I know we didn't touch on the new works commissions that she does at the Met either, but that can only be enhanced by, like you're saying, like these projects where she's meeting different mentors and knowing what chances and opportunities there are from that level right up to the top level, you know, from poor communities, from underprivileged, from inclusivity, like all the way up to the Metropolitan Opera. And I have to say, actually, you know, obviously, as someone who's worked at the Met many, many, many times, it gives me great heart to know that that's what's happening at the bubbling at the young artist level, because you don't always get that much thoughtfulness and empathy at the top level, because people, for so many reasons. So actually the fact that house has someone like that's you know, putting that in at a young level and being honest and open and creating young artists who are going to be great people, or the best people that they can be, I think is it's amazing.
The future of the industry is in good hands if she's helping to craft what it's going to be. I loved the idea as well that they do have that holistic approach to the well-being of the performers. So they're not just getting that intensive drama and movement and vocal work, but also the financial stuff and the mental well-being. Oh my God, we're going to have, you know, again, as a former singer, but also as a producer, I know singers are crazy, right? I know it firsthand, and I see it on both directions. The idea that we could have a well-balanced industry of mentally healthy humans is almost shocking to me. I don't know how I'd cope in that space because I won't be one of them. I won't be one of those well-adjusted humans. And I'll be there going, damn you for being so well-adjusted.
I always also found it really fascinating listening to her talk about when I asked about something difficult she's had to do, and she said, you know, obviously there are some people who do all the right things and yet they still,
oh my God,
you know, don't succeed, and that's the reality of it, isn't it? You know, like sometimes it doesn't matter how
the
great
numbers
you are,
don't work, how
great the package is, how great the voice is. Sometimes you don't get an opportunity, or B, people just, you know, we've talked previously on the podcast about, you know, when casting directors are in positions for a long time and they don't like someone, well, you know, you're not going to work there, you know, like it's, and then when she said that sometimes it's difficult because she has to be supportive and empathetic, but that sometimes she has to be like, you're just
you're
being
a
knob.
jerk.
You know,
I love that.
Not her words. You're a jerk. Yeah. And you don't think of people in those positions having to have those chats with singers, but I guess there must be so much feeling of responsibility around that too, which would be
incredibly difficult. And I know in a position like that would keep me awake at night sometimes if I had those things to do.
I think you and I have been really fortunate though, because so much of what Melissa described that the Lindemann program was, we had the real benefits of in the Royal Academy Opera program. So there was so much of that I found familiar, even down to that, the human mentoring. Because I remember Tony Legg taking me aside one day and talking to me about how to bring a different energy into a rehearsal room. I always considered myself to be really collegiate and to just go along and get along. And he took me aside and he set me a task for a set of scenes working with a new director that I had to bring a slightly more diva attitude and to assert myself more, to put myself front and center. And that was a huge learning opportunity for me. And I've got to say, it was really difficult because, I am a go along, get along, pretty laid back person. But to have to, he wanted to hear more of my artistic voice in the room rather than just being a blank slate for a director. And he said, this director that we've got coming in, I think can actually take some pushback from you. I'd like to see you do that. But, getting that opportunity to have people guide you in that way and help you work in the industry.
Someone in that position that's willing to... someone in that position that's willing to be honest with you and to have those chats with you, no matter whether you take it or no matter whether you can.
But that was phenomenal for me and really changed how I worked in a room and changed my level of professionalism because, again, it helped me develop an artistic voice in the room and really value my own opinion of artistic choices. So I'll forever be thankful for that specific conversation that I had with Tony Legg.
Also, just what an inspiration to those people who, I know we have a lot of young singers who listen to the podcast, but also just to anyone who is looking at arts management and getting into that kind of position. Like what a person to look at. In fact, now I'm considering, not singing high notes anymore and, going into something different because she's inspired me so much. I won't.
No, you have to do it all.
I love the sound of my own voice too much.
Because I didn't realize that she still performs as well. Like I knew that she'd come up as a performer.
Right.
Oh my God, she still performs. Like, what doesn't she do? It's just, I feel like such an underperformer myself. Cool. Dear God. Right.
She doesn't juggle.
She doesn't juggle.
Right,
there we go.
Do.
We've got that over her.
Something.
Hey, I'm looking at the clock and I know you have to run. So I'm going to wrap this up. But, oh my God, that was both inspirational and just a little bit mortifying. I feel like we've got to go do something really practical and
who are we gonna have on
generous
next?
And fantastic for the rest of the day. So I'm going to go find something that will have a great positive outcome for the world next.
You go do that.
I'll go do that. And hey, we'll chat next week.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.